first of all, thank you for sharing that. I think your experience is not unique, unfortunately. I think there's a lot of people who feel a genuine frustration at how the system has behaved, and more importantly, how there has been this dynamic of privatized gains and socialized losses. The way I would resolve it is that that's wrong, right? And yet it seems that the models or that the tools that are being used give us no option to that, right? And at the core, what that's telling you is that the models that are being used by the regulators, that are being used by the Fed, the way they're thinking about markets is unfortunately a mistake. And the consequences that we're going to reap from that are well underway are a byproduct of, the John Maynard Keynes quote, rational men who think themselves, set apart are ultimately the slave of some defunct economist, right? We are being ruled by a series of theories on markets in terms of what they represent that are not what markets are supposed to do in the simplest form, right? There's a deep misunderstanding. I would encourage, and you've heard me say this over and over and over again, but I cannot encourage people enough to go read the work of Ole Peters, right? So Ole Peters' work on ergodicity and non-ergodic systems sits fundamentally at the center of what we are experiencing. We have a theory of economics and a theory of how markets work that is fundamentally flawed, right? The idea that we can model things or we can think about risk in a framework in which we run 1,000 simulations and we say, here are the potential outcomes based on the historical distribution, right? A Monte Carlo type simulation. That's how we think about risk. That's what keeps leading us down this path, right? We basically throw up our hands and we say, well, who could have foreseen that, right? Most listeners will be familiar with the principles of Hyman Minsky's approach, right? The stability begets instability. That's another way of saying that there is no way of empirically testing something in the past if you rely on the insights from the past to create your structures today, right? And so what we keep doing is we keep looking to the past. We keep saying, well, what has happened before? And then let's make increasingly levered bets that that's going to continue in the future, right? It's an inherently short volatility approach that is being reinforced by regulators who say, well, we couldn't possibly have foreseen how that could go as badly as it did, right? But we have to keep the system going because people ultimately depend upon it. And there's truth to that, right? At the end of the day, particularly in the United States, which, love it or hate it, it is the world's dominant economy and by and large sets the tone for everything else that's going on. Right? We've created conditions under which the social safety net is largely a function of employment. If you have a job, then you have health care. If you have a job, then you have cash flow coming in to pay your rent, to pay your mortgage, to pay your credit card bills, to pay for your children's education, et cetera, right? We have made individuals completely dependent upon the corporate sector. And as a result, the socializing losses dynamic is focused around preserving those institutions. We don't want corporations to go bankrupt because that means that the individuals that work for those corporations are then going to be left dependent on a very weak social safety net outside of the corporate sector, right? That is just a fundamental choice in how you organize society. Do you choose to put the social safety net in the hands of corporations and then increasingly give those corporations the flexibility under the idea of corporate efficiency to fire people at will, to put people out onto the streets, to effectively create the conditions that I would argue that most Americans, and it's not just the United States, although I think it's extreme in the United States, are terrified of losing their jobs? Right? I mean, that's really the condition. And as a 50-year-old man, right, nobody feels it more intently than somebody like myself or somebody like yourself, a little younger, better looking. But, we're in a situation where, candidly, if our careers go away, there's not that much left for us. And many people feel that, particularly at this age. This is the age my father was when he lost his job, last real job, right? And that's a terrifying prospect for a lot of people. You feel that stress. You see it in the suicide statistics, et cetera. And if you look at the data behind it, right? I mean, a staggering statistic that I would share with people is when you look at the GI Bill and the soldiers that came back from World War II, the rates of entrepreneurship, the rates of new business formation in that cohort was nearly 50%. 45% of all GIs who came back and took advantage of the GI Bill started their own companies. Right? Think about that. Think about the dynamism that that releases in an economy. Today, 95% of all employment goes through the payroll sector, right? Whether it's government employment or whether it's the corporate payroll employment, right? We've lost our rates of entrepreneurship. We've lost our rates of risk taking. And we have to ask ourselves why that is, right? We have all sorts of gig economy type jobs where people fancy themselves as running their own business, right? You're an Uber driver or you're renting a seat in a salon and cutting hair. But you're not really running your own business. You haven't gone through the process of licensing. You haven't gone through the process of new business formation. You haven't created an employment identification number, right? You don't have a license from the state of Delaware that incorporates you in a variety of ways, right? And the reason why is because we don't want that. What we want is we want the corporate sector to provide that social safety net, replacing these quote unquote burdens on the corporate sector and simultaneously empowering them, giving them a claim over our lives. It makes people very unhappy and very uncomfortable and results in the sort of regulatory capture that you're reacting to.